ready for the next one? Because this one's going to hit hard as well. I'm not like messing around here. These
I know. Oh my god. I'm nervous for this one.
Okay, so the next one was both. I got it twice on Instagram actually. And so I'm going to read out both comments that I got on Instagram because I think they're both really good and they kind of cross over in my mind, but we'll see where the conversation goes. Pride and Prejudice 1995 and 2005 are separate entities and I can love both equally without comparing them. And then the other comment was, the 2005 Pride and Prejudice chose beauty over substance and it disappoints me every time. So I feel like these are two separate conversations, but I feel like they may cross over. So I just wanted to read both of them out. So your thoughts on this whole, like, I mean, I know it's like a point of like massive debate in the Jane Austen community, like people like in the 2005 and 1995, the who's the better Darcy argument, which gosh, that gets people heated. But yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts on the two adaptations and whether or not you can love them as separate entities or if there is room for comparison.
That's interesting, the two comments that you just read. I disagree slightly with both of them. I think you can love the 1995 and 2005 version for different reasons, which is true for me. But it's impossible not to compare them. And I think it's okay to compare them because they are the same story. Read the second, what was the second comment again?
Okay, so the second one said, the 2005 Pride and Prejudice chose beauty over substance and it disappoints me every time.
I think that's too harsh. I see the point, and I think the 2005 version has stunning cinematography, absolutely beautiful, but I don't think that's fair because I think they're trying to portray the state of the Bennet's lifestyle in a really realistic way. Like there are pigs and chickens around and there aren't beautiful ball gowns all the time. I think in a way it's kind of rugged. It is beautifully done, but
oh my gosh, okay. I feel like we're going to totally disagree on that stance in particular, though, you know? Like, I think the 2005 one, they don't portray the Bennets well at all. Like, I think they... like, I don't really get why they're, like, living... Like, I get that they have an estate, and on the estate they probably have farm animals and, like, a farm situation going on. But they're literally, like, living in the farm. Like, they got pigs running through the house, and... like they do their own like laundry and everything. And I know the Bennets are like struggling for money, but they're not at that point, I don't believe, like in the book. Like I don't feel that. I'm like, I get that they're maybe a little bit tight on cash, but they're still, you know, able to live a genteel lifestyle.
Oh, and that's more what I'm saying is that's why if you labeled it as beautiful, I don't think that's really fair because they kind of portray them in this as living in dirty conditions, and they sort of exaggerate that. Because, yeah, in the book, it's a little bit more genteel, but I think 2005 is trying to really exaggerate the class differences. So what I would say is I'm biased. I grew up with the 1995 miniseries, and I had seen it probably at least 50 times. Like it just was totally ingrained in me from a young age. I just loved it. I just loved it. I had every line memorized. I like that the 1995 version really includes all of the important aspects of the plot, in my opinion, and they honor Jane Austen's language. I understand that sometimes you have to modernize the language so that people can understand, but they really use her language and they don't modernize too much, and the plot doesn't feel rushed. And so the 2005 version to me, in recent years, I've appreciated it more. I think there's more of that intensity and humanness. The chemistry is so palpable, which is so funny because Jennifer Ellie and Colin Firth actually dated in real life, and Keira Knightley actually dated the Wickham actor, not Darcy. But you can just feel the palpable chemistry in the 2005 version, and there's a humanness to that one that I really like. But as far as the plot goes, I feel like the language is simplified, and I feel like the plot is very, very rushed in the 2005 version, and I don't appreciate that aspect of it.
Yes. No, I really agree with that. Something that I love the 2005 one, but like you, I grew up with the 1995 one, and that was like fully ingrained in my brain when I was like, in primary school. Like, I literally was raised on that. That was, I was just set up to be a Jane Austen fan. And yeah, I mean, did I ever tell you that I went to World Book Day dressed as Elizabeth Bennet? So I was in primary school, so I must have been like 7 or 8 or something. And I went to World Book Day dressed as Elizabeth Bennet, and nobody knew who I was. It was so funny. My mum made me an outfit with like a pillowcase so that I could dress up as Lizzie Bennet. So funny. But yeah, no one knew who I was, obviously, because I was like 7, so nobody had read the book. But I was going, my mum was like, it's a book, so you can go as Elizabeth.
Oh my gosh, I would have known, Izzy. I would have known who you were, and that just makes me more and more be like, we were destined to become friends, because I did the same thing. It wasn't even an event. We were going to the grocery store, and I like put Jennifer Ellie's mole right here and like did the curls around my head. Like, really, it was very extra.
Oh my god, I'm dying. That's so funny. But yeah, I grew up with that one, so I'll always love it. And for me, I feel like the comparison comes between the book in the 1995 one, full on one side, and the 2005 full on another. I feel like that is an artistic expression of the novel and the story, whereas I feel like the 1995 one, like most BBC adaptations, is a very accurate portrayal of the plot, the narrative, and the characters. And something that really bothers me about the 2005 one is because they cut out scenes, they cut out a lot of character development from some of the secondary characters.
Yes.
I mean, for one, we're missing one of the Bingley sisters, which I think does make a massive impact on Caroline's behaviour. I think like the other sister eggs are on. I feel like we see Elizabeth having to put up with a lot more when it's 2 sisters as opposed to 1 that she's having to deal with. We lose so much of Mrs. Gardiner's character development and her support of Elizabeth. And oh my God, that annoys me so much. So some of you may have not read this, but I actually wrote an article for the Jane Austen Literacy Foundation. It was in their, they have like an article, or they put issues out. It's called Pride and Possibilities. And I wrote a whole article on Mrs. Gardiner because I truly believe she's a very significant character. And I think she's incredibly impactful on Elizabeth's journey. So it upsets me that we don't see more of her in the 2005 one, because I feel like we see the Gardiners more as a pair, and I don't think Mrs. Gardiner gets enough airtime on her own to show like what a strong and impactful character she is in her own right.
Yes, and if you haven't read that article at all, it's so good. You definitely need to read it. Izzy did a great job. And I agree. Mrs. Gardiner is so important, because I think the fact that Mr. Darcy is truly fond of the Gardiners, that is part of his whole character redemption too, that he does, when someone has a good personality and a good sense of morality, he does respect them regardless of their status. So I agree with that. I just think exactly certain character development, they don't have time for it. And then I agree with you on the artistry. 2005 is such a beautifully artistic movie, and it captures the emotional intensity of the character so well. I love all of that. But I think a lot of the actors in the 1995 version are better too, and more accurate depictors of the characters from the book. For example, we all know that Judi Dench is a phenomenal actress, but I think the 1995 Lady Catherine de Bourgh does a much better job. And I also, for as endearing as Mr. Bennet is in Mr. Bingley is in the 2005 version, I think they exaggerate him as sort of this bumbling idiot and like really socially unaware and kind of dumb. And I like his depiction a lot more in the 1995 version. And I think that depiction shows that he's more Jane's equal. So that might be an unpopular opinion.
No, I love that. I think in the 2005 when he comes across really young and immature, and I almost feel as if it's like Jane has way more maturity in I don't know, just wisdom than Mr. Bingley. And I don't think that's quite right. I feel like they're set up to be equals. Yes, they've got those more like softer undertones to their personalities. They're much more sensitive people. But I don't think I don't think that's portrayed well in the 2005 one. I think it shows that, but then it also shows this like weird dynamic where Mr. Bingley kind of appears a bit like a child that needs to be like ushered around by Mr. Darcy. Whereas in the 1995 one, I think it shows that maybe he's not like that strong, bold character who can stand up to Darcy, but I think it shows that he is still a respectable and, you know, confident person in his own right.
Exactly. Yes. He's a catch. He is really sociable. He's the one who carries the social dynamics in the friendship. That's why it's so annoying that they have Mr. Bingley be like socially inept, because with Darcy and Mr. Bingley, the reason that they are on even playing fields is Darcy is actually more socially awkward, and Bingley's the one who connects with everyone. He's so charismatic. He sees the best in people. And then, yeah, the reason that he can't stand up to Mr. Darcy is he's just a little bit naive and doesn't want to think badly of people, but he's not some bumbling idiot. So I'm glad you understand that. And yeah, for whatever reason, Rosamund Pike with that actor, it just seemed more like a maternal son. It just, yeah, he seemed young for her and mentally in every way. Yeah.
Well, you also remember that Mr. Bingley is not stupid. Like, he is thriving new money. You know, his family have come up from trade. His father set up and he was really successful. They don't yet own their own estate. That's why he's renting Netherfield. And basically Mr. Bingley's part is like second generation wealth in their family, is that he is trying to find an estate and he's trying to build connections so that he's more established in, you know, genteel society, which is why Mr. Darcy and his friendship is so amazing, because in terms of, you know, family standings, Mr. Darcy's got like way deeper roots in terms of like wealth and society compared to Mr. Bingley. But, you know, Mr. Bingley's still like obviously got a thriving, you know, entrepreneurial side to him, and he's like running all of the money for his sisters because his father's died. So he's like the man of the household, and he's only got one sister married. So he's still got another sister to worry about. And yeah, I don't for 1 minute consider him to be, you know, stupid. He goes to London for business. That's like one of the reasons why he, you know, leaves.
Exactly. I'm so glad that you understand my perspective on that. I just found it belittling to Mr. Bingley's character in the way they portrayed him in the 2005 version. But I think that this might be an unpopular opinion, because I know a lot of people love that actor and find him very endearing in that role. But
I think he's endearing. Like, I wouldn't say he's not. Like, I think he is endearing, and I think he's really enjoyable to watch. But yeah, I think I think again, that's just like character development's just become lost, I think, because they've had to condense it down so much. They have to take out certain aspects of people's personality so that it fits better. I think about even Wickham. Like, I think they maybe mention, no, I don't even think they mention it. The Mary King situation, maybe they do, like slightly. But in the 1995 one, we actually see him like starting to dance with Mary King and starting to like interact with her. Then we see Mrs. Gardiner being like, I'm not sure about this. Like, he seems like a bit of a gold digger. And, you know, the red flags are kind of set before Darcy even says to Elizabeth. And so there's already people who start to turn the wheels for Elizabeth, and like that Mr. Wickham's maybe not this great guy. And, you know, she still holds to her guns that he is, obviously, because she goes and like confronts Darcy about it. But I think all of those things are important, and we do lose that in the 2005 one. We lose that in a lot of the film adaptations compared to the, you know, the BBC ones, where they have the leeway of having more time. Like, I'm such a sucker for the 2009 Emma adaptation. Like, to me, that is perfection. And honestly, no film matches up for me with that one. With the Pride and Prejudice, I'm a little bit more like, I like both of them, but with the Emma, I'm just like, no, friends. It's 2009 or nothing.
Oh my gosh, I have seen that one. I'll have to rewatch it though, because I didn't have that reaction of it being so above and beyond the other ones. So I'll have to go back and give that another chance for sure. But yeah, I think you're right. I think we have to, in fairness, the 2005 version, because it's a movie, had to condense. But I just think the story, I appreciate the slower build of character development and the air of mystery and the nuance that's in it. And I think it makes it a much more powerful story. So maybe Pride and Prejudice is just better served being a miniseries of some kind. Yeah,
but then so many people came into it, didn't they, from the 2005 one? So it obviously captured people's hearts, because I know so many people that their introduction to Pride and Prejudice was, or their introduction to Jane Austen even, was the 2005 adaptation. I can kind of get it. It's beautiful. It's exciting. It's just, yeah. And I love all the earthy tones. I'm here for earthy tones, like, you know, greens and browns.
Yeah, and I am forever grateful that it did get Jane Austen so much publicity, and so many people love that version, and I enjoy that version. And maybe, you know, in fairness, the 1995 miniseries, it's a commitment. It's a lot of time, so you have to get really into it. I have to ask you, which Mr. Collins do you prefer?
Oh, 1995 for sure. He is so creepy and cringe. Oh my gosh. Like, he's got like greasy hair, and it's just, oh, it's bad. It's bad, friends. It's in his dancing. Oh my God. Honestly. I know when he's like, gosh, don't. I kind of, yeah, I feel like that portrays Mr. Collins really well, especially if you pick up on the kind of more evil undertones of his character, compared to the 2005 one, which I think showed him more as like more sympathetically, that you could pity him more and kind of just feel bad for him, like he's just a bit of a weird guy. But you know what bothers a lot of people though is Mr. Collins isn't actually short. Like, in the book, he's not described as short. I think he's even described as tall. Like, he's I don't know why they picked that. I'm guessing for like some sort of like power struggle between him and Darcy, but I'm like, yeah, that was a weird choice that 2005 decided to carry on with.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, he's described as tall and kind of bumbling, like having an awkward gait, which, oh my gosh, David Bamber does so well in the 1995 version. He's just like tripping everywhere. Like, remember when he's in the carriage, he almost falls out, and he's like, "Have a care, Dawkins." Like, it's just so awkward.
Remember when he walks in on Lydia? Oh no, Lydia comes out in the hallway and she's like half dressed. And
oh my gosh.
What to do? Like, oh my God. That's actually brilliant, honestly. Oh.
I love that so much. Yeah, I think you're probably right about him being shorter in the 2005 version, so that it would just, yeah, the power struggle with him and Darcy. That's smart. And he just looks awkward with Keira Knightley because she's pretty tall. Yeah, so I, above and beyond, love the 1995 Mr. Collins, but I will say I do really like the scene with the flower and then Keira Knightley's face being like, oh my gosh, what a creep. And like when he's dancing so close to her face. So he does a good job too. Yeah,
I agree. I don't have too many. There's obviously actors and characters that I prefer in the different adaptations. Most of them do fall that I prefer the ones in the 1995 one, just because I think they more accurately portray the book versions of the characters. But and I never got into that whole like argument between like Matthew McFadden or Colin Firth. Like, I just don't. You couldn't replace either Darcy and pop them into the other films. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, they are very much elements of their own movie, like their own films and TV series. Like, you couldn't change them over, and because you can't change them over, I'm just like, I struggle more to compare the two Darcys than I do the two mediums. Does that make sense? I'm like, I can compare the TV series to the film, but comparing the specific Darcys, I'm just like, I don't know, because they fit the content that they're in.
110% agree. When you said that, I've never even thought about that. I was like mentally going like this because I was trying to think of Colin Firth in the 2005 and vice versa. Yeah, it wouldn't work. They're well suited to the productions they're in, for sure.
I think so. I think they soften all of the characters for the 2005 one to make them more accessible to people, because I think there's nuances to all of the characters in Pride and Prejudice that I think to all of Jane Austen's characters, you know, she's very clear that people aren't perfect, they've got flaws, and she is not shy about showing them. Whereas I feel like in the 2005 one, they're a little bit like, let's just dampen people's flaws a little bit so that they're not so obvious. There's some more perfect people out here. Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I love Mr. Bennet in the 1995 one way more than the 2005.
I love Mr. Bennet in that version. He just has such a twinkle in his eye, and the way his sarcasm is perfect in the way he interacts with Mr. Collins, the way he smiles at Lizzie. The one thing that I'll give Donald Sutherland credit about is when he talks to Lizzie about Darcy's proposal, and he's like, I'd never part with you for anyone less worthy. When his eyes well up with tears, that part really touched my heart. So I was like, all right, Donald, you redeemed yourself in that moment. But for all the rest of it, I love that 1995 Mr. Bennet. And I also love Mrs. Bennet, too, in 1995 version.
Yeah, she's so funny. Oh, my gosh. Oh.
Where is he?
Obviously, like, we're just suckers to the 1995 one. What can we say? It's just... I feel like when you're raised on it, that's just it. It's just ingrained, and it's like... But I like that both of us also enjoy the 2005 one. I don't have any issues with it at all. I enjoy watching it. I find it super enjoyable. It's also easier if I'm with people who aren't massive Jane Austen fans, but I want to watch Pride and Prejudice. I'm like, how about we watch the 2005 one? Because I know if I'm like 1995, they'll be like, hell to the no. Like, yeah. I'm not committing to that. So I'm like, that's an easier in for me. So, yeah, I mean, what can we say? I think you can enjoy them separately without comparing. I think people get sometimes too intense with the comparisons for them. I think they're both good in their own rights. And I think that they definitely did choose beauty over substance, I will say, in the grand scheme of things. But I think that makes sense because of how short the film is, and because it wanted to reach a larger audience. As amazing as the 1995 version is, I can understand why that didn't. Well, obviously it reached a lot of people at the time, but I can understand why it's not necessarily continued to keep reaching people like the 2005 one has. Usually people come to the 1995 one after they've seen the 2005 one now. So I think the 2005 one did a great job to bringing more people into the community.
I completely agree with that. I think it's impossible not to compare the two, but I think they have different things to offer in their own right. And as much as I do prefer and love the 1995 version, I do think that in addition to the cinematography and beauty portrayed in the 2005 version, I think there's an element of, like, how would I put it? There's an element of, like, empathy for the human condition, or like when Mr. Bennet is hugging Mary crying, like I feel like the 2000 version pulls at your heartstrings on an emotional level that I really appreciate.
Yeah, again, I think that's another reason why it's more accessible to people nowadays, because I feel like the 1995 version might be seen as a bit cold just because it's more accurately portraying the book, and people weren't necessarily as hands-on, and like that's why balls was such a big thing, because people were actually being intimate where they're not usually. So I think the 2005 one makes more sense, because otherwise people would be like, everybody's so mean and cold and just